Hey everyone, and welcome to my channel. Today we will be painting a beautiful sun rays in woods. I think this might be a little bit more easier than it looks at first, and I'm gonna start with making my sketch using a pencil and of course an eraser. And this time, well, that is not a usual thing for me. I will draw my sketch onto watercolor paper because I do believe this sketch is quite easy. I don't expect to erase too much, so I don't expect smudges on my paper, and I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna draw it directly onto watercolor paper, and if you don't feel like ready to do that or comfortable with that, just use any printing paper, make your sketch, and then trace it onto watercolor paper by using a graphite paper. That is how I usually do that. Or just putting your paper onto a window and trace it that way if you're using just one sheet of paper. And I'm using block of paper, so that is not really an option for me. I cannot put it on a window and trace it. When finished with my sketch, I'm using this kneaded eraser, artist eraser, to just remove excess graphite. For this one, it's not actually necessary to lighten it because we're gonna paint it very dark, but I just want to pick up the excess graphite, so that is why I'm using it. And when finished with that, I'm moving on to painting, and I did not pre-wet my paper this time. I'm using this large mauve brush and a lot of water in it. So I mixed some grayish color with blue and brown and get that bluish grayish color, as if it's a foggy day, maybe some winter or fall day when there is some sunshine and it's shining through the woods. So I am skipping the middle part, as you can see right now, going around it because that is where my sun is going to be, and I do want that part to be left the lightest, even though the entire sky is light, but when it dries it will give this beautiful color to it. Then I'm moving on to painting the ground. And I started with a lighter color, and then on top of it adding a little bit darker color. As you could have seen, I've painted the entire painting with that lighter color, and again skipping that middle part with a little bit darker color because I do want that part to look a little bit lightened by those sun rays. So I'm skipping that part, again adding darker pigment on sides of my paper, or sides of my painting. And as you could have seen also, I let the part where the sky and our land is meeting to bleed one into each other, because that is actually what I wanted. It will give the notion that it's a little bit further away, and that impression of depth. Again, adding a little bit darker color onto the sides, and then I dried it slightly. I did not dry it completely, and then sprinkled some clean water, and afterwards I've dried it completely. When that dried, I moved on to painting the trees, and I'm starting off with the trees that are gonna look as though they are furthest away from us, and as though there are some smallest maybe trees. And I'm not really trying to avoid the parts where I drew my sketch for the larger trees, because when I add them on they will be darker, and those lines for those lighter trees will be covered and not visible. And when I finished with those, I'm moving on to the ones that are going to be a little bit nearer to us, and then painting them again slightly lighter. Then I will paint the trees that will be nearest to us. Also, when finished with that on the land, when I paint the tree to touch the land, I just smudge that part down because I don't want it to look as though it has a harsh finish, but I do want it to look as though it is going into the ground. So also we will be adding a little bit more pigment to the ground, so don't worry about that. Now it doesn't look very nice or believable, but we will be adding a little bit more pigment to the ground, and then all of that will blend one into each other. When it came to paint the tree that will be in the middle and where the sun will be shining on it, I painted that tree first a little bit lighter, and then on top of that first lighter layer I will be adding a darker one and going mostly on the left side, upper and down. You will see that right now. Just skipping the middle part. There you go. Now I'm adding a little bit of that darker pigment on left side and also down and upwards, and I will be picking up again smudging the lower part of the tree, making it blend into the ground. And also be careful when you're painting the trees that you're gonna paint first those trees that are a little bit further away and then the trees that are near to us, because when you smudge that lower part, it should look as though that tree is in front of the tree that is behind him. You know, if you paint those trees that are near to you first and then smudge those that are further away, it will actually look as though they are near to us. So just keep that also in mind. And as you could have seen that left and the right tree I've painted that way, picked up a little bit of that lighter paint to make it very, very light, looking as though it's very, very illuminated by the sun rays. And then finished off the other trees that are going to be on my right side, again painting first those that are further away and then those that are near to us. When finished with the trees, I'm moving on to painting again the ground, adding a little bit more of that darker pigment to cover that part where the trees are touching the ground, and also to add a little bit more pigment, a little bit more layers, looking as though that part is not lightened and it's in a quite dark, so making that part a little bit more darker. When I was happy with how dark it was, I've sprinkled again some brown into the middle part, making it look as though there are maybe some flowers or something like that, and some grasses. And then with this larger brush, I've actually, been very bad to this brush and pressing it hardly just to spread the bristles, and with that brush I've tapped in the color for the leaves, and I'm not trying to make them perfect. I've just added a couple of those. You can actually use here maybe some sponge. If you have a nicer sponge, you can use sponge here. You don't have to ruin your good bigger brush, or maybe if you don't have a bigger brush, maybe you can use a flat brush with stiff bristles. That would be also fine. Whatever makes it comfortable for you to paint leaves. And again, when I finished with that, I moved on to painting the sun rays, and I'm using a smaller flat brush for that. This is number 12, I think. And as you could have seen, I'm just dipping it into water, then removing excess water from it, and then picking up the paint. And it's very good if you have the paint that can be easily lifted up. And as you could see, now adding those sun rays. That is actually the easiest way for me. You can also use maybe masking fluid to cover that part, but it doesn't look as believable as if when you're picking up the paint. And again, you can use a round brush here, again, if that makes it easier for you, or maybe, I don't know, I do usually use a flat brush. I find it to be the easiest to get that straight line. But if you don't have it, I don't know really what to tell you. Maybe a round brush, the tip of that round brush, or just press it slightly to make it a little bit more flatter. But it should be a little bit more stiffer. And if you're using very, very light round brush, I'm not sure if you could pick up the paint with that. And then again, adding a little bit more darker lines in between those lighter that I made. Couple of sprinkles in brown, and then in white, again couple of in brown on the upper part where the leaves are. And when it all dried, I decided I do want to add a little bit more pigment around the sun, just to make it look as though there are that tree, and add a couple of lines to make it look as some parts are a little bit darker and some are a little bit lighter, illuminated by the sun. And I suppose with that, I'll be finishing off this painting and of course this video. Thank you guys a lot for watching. I hope you like it, you learned something. I think it's fun. It probably looks quite harder than it actually is, and if you follow these simple steps, I think you can do it. Maybe not from the first try, but maybe try it twice, 3 times, and I'm sure you will get there. And if you do like this video, please hit the like button, share it, comment, tell me please what you think about it. And if you haven't still, well, what are you waiting for? Subscribe to my channel. And if you want to go even a step further, maybe consider joining my channel. Press that join button, listen to the offer, and decide whether or not you want to join. And again, thank you so much for watching, and I hope I'll see you next time. Bye!